Welcome to the Leadership is Female podcast. Ruchi Desai, co-founder and co-chief executive officer at 8 Brewing Company. Welcome. We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
So tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, such a great question. I feel like so hard to answer. I think at my core, I would describe myself, as an early riser. At 8, we talk about them as people, who wake up every day with ambitious goals. They're driven. They're just trying to get one step closer to them and be a little bit better than they were the day before. And I think that's probably a common thread for me. Personally, I'm an avid triathlete, did a few marathons, but now I've kind of, as I've gotten older, switched over to these multi-sport races and just haven't looked back. So some goals around that. I've partnered to my husband, Dan. I have a Vizsla pup named Rhubarb, was very near and dear to my heart. And so really just trying to stay connected to them while I'm on the road. And then professionally, I lead sales and operations at 8. So I oversee everything from, our production and supply chain logistics to our finance, legal, HR, just how do you run a business and keep it moving, as well as I lead our sales team. And that just involves, our distributor relationships, retailers, pricing, placement, you name it, everything to kind of get the beer to our consumers.
So before we talk about that career journey, did you say your dog's name is Rhubarb?
Yes, like the root.
Yeah. So I love that. My mom made this dish called rhubarb crunch every summer. That was very sweet and delicious. And I know most people don't know what that is. Where'd the name come from?
It's such a funny story. So my husband and I wanted 2 dogs at first, and we're like, we'll get a boy and a girl, and he got to name one. My cousin actually called me Rhubarb when I was a kid, on and off, and I thought that's a cute dog name, so we'll do that. But the craziest thing was my mother-in-law was she was cleaning out their house as they were moving, and she found a book that she used to read to my husband about a dog named Rhubarb. What? And I was like, if this is not meant to be, that was, what more science could you need? So yeah.
Wow, the universe really put that right in your house. That's
crazy. Really did. Yeah. So I have the book sitting on our nightstand now, and we see it every day.
That's so cute. Okay. Always get distracted by a dog, right? Okay. Yeah. So how did you get there in your career? You have a prestigious education, and I'm going to review it for the audience. So don't be embarrassed. Be very proud of what you've accomplished. So the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, Harvard Law, and the London School of Economics. What motivated you to pursue your education at these institutions, and how did you ultimately land in law?
Yeah, it's a great question. I come from a family of medical professionals. Basically, everyone else in my family, there's some form of doctor or, a pharmacist, things of that nature. And higher education was just, I didn't really question it. It was just something that we would always do. And I've always been a bit of an academic at heart. I love studying new subjects and topics and being able to explore. There's just so much out there that I find incredibly interesting. And as you mentioned, I had the privilege of attending really, really great schools, brilliant minds. I think that's probably one of my favorite parts. One of my freshman year roommate from college was a Rhodes Scholar. I have friends who are now professors, they're environmental lawyers, and it's such an incredible experience. And that was really what motivated me, I think, to keep on going. And my parents, they're immigrants. They both came to the US when they were pretty young. My dad was 19, my mom was 24. So they've worked so hard to help me provide those experiences. But really, ultimately, with those schools, part of it was just it gave me a pedigree or reason to be in a room. And I think that was their way of providing something that they couldn't, because they didn't have a vast network when they came here. So that really for the schools and the law, I found that super interesting. And I started my career as a derivatives trader. So back in 2008, when, a lot of derivatives in general were kind of imploding, and I knew I wanted to study something further, and I had a great business education. So looking around, law is such an amazing foundation. I think of lawyers as advocates who are fighting in a courtroom, or, trapping opponents, or if you've seen Suits, it seems very glamorous and exciting, and it can be, but at the heart of all of it, right, you're looking at new situations and kind of understanding a context, recognizing patterns, and figuring out how can I take what I know or adapt it into an innovative solution for this specific situation or context. And I think that's really what attracted me to the law. It has, helped me use it throughout my career.
Yeah, it sounds like that has really become a tool in your tool belt because you're now co-founder and co-chief executive officer at 8 Brewing Company, but your path to this position included 10 years of experience working as a lawyer, a professor, an operations director at several different companies. So how did this nonlinear path shape the leader and executive that you are today?
Yeah, I mean, every experience is so valuable. You learn so much. I think every failure, every mistake I've made, every bad job I've had, I've drawn something from that to tell me who I want to be, what I want to avoid when I have a chance to lead teams. But my dad, he actually started his own business about 30 years ago. It's one of the largest rehab providers now in California, and his title is head coach. And I love that. I think that ethos has shaped how I see leadership. Every single day, I have a team that I have to lead, and my role is to make sure that they can perform at their best, right? I have to figure out what expectations I have, communicate them clearly, set goals for them collaboratively, of course, and then also make sure that they have the resources they need. And sometimes, that might be helping them acquire new skills, seeing what roadblocks are there, what coaching they need to understand how to get there. But also other times it just means being a voice, someone to listen and advocate for them. And I think no matter what role I'm playing, it's always about holding everyone accountable, including myself. I think we all make so many mistakes. In my first job, I mentioned I was a trader. I made mistakes that cost thousands of dollars at a time. I was learning and I didn't know. But my boss would always just ask me, well, how do you fix it? What are we going to do about it? And I think that's really that accountability and allowing room to grow is the best way to truly lead teams. And we can make mistakes, but coming up with a solution and moving forward and making sure we don't repeat them, I think is just a recipe for success.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about what you're doing now. Tell us about 8 Beer. Your co-founders are Troy Aikman, Doug Campbell, and Jake Dunier. How are you working together to succeed in one of America's most competitive industries?
Yeah, tirelessly, I would say. It's a lot of work for everyone. I mean, we're in an incredible tough segment. It's the brands that have been here. You think about Michelob Ultra, Miller Lite. They've been around for so long and they dominate the category. They have so many more resources than we do. It's truly a team effort. We have to partner closely with our distributors and our retailers who believe in our vision and support it. They've been really great. We all have to be very nimble and quick. As a team, it's pivoting and responding to opportunities as they arise. This past weekend, actually, we hit this awesome milestone. We had our very first television commercial, and it aired during the Cowboys game. We figured out what spots we wanted, made sure we had the budget for it, recut our video to a 30-second spot in about 24 hours. It was just a quick turn. We didn't expect to spend that much money in the first month of the year, but we saw the opportunity. And I think that's really what it's all about. How do we pivot and be nimble in a way that gives us an advantage over our competitors? And I think one really great thing about all 4 of us and our team actually as a whole is that we have a lot of unique perspectives, different backgrounds, different strengths, and we all bring that to the table and really respect each other. We have to trust each other and leverage all of that to truly make a difference and an impact.
Yeah, and I love how nimble the company is. That was such a great example. Can you give us a couple of examples about what partnership means for you and what it means for your company? We have so many listeners that work in the sports industry that are working with brands to elevate their presence, utilizing the known existing brand of their team. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's tough. There's so many brands out there. It's just like you said, everyone's trying to leverage something. And these teams, they've created amazing fan bases and loyal customers and people who are paying attention. And when we really think about how to partner, we think about a couple different things. First is who's our core consumer, our core drinker we want to reach? What do they value? What matters to them? And how does this partnership allow us to either highlight one of those values or fill a need and show up authentically to them, and really make sure we're not doing something just for the sake of visibility or more eyeballs? That's not ultimately what's going to help build us as a great brand. And I think consumers are smart. They can see through things that don't make sense or aren't authentic. And then the second part is kind of doing the same thing for our partner. What are they trying to achieve? What's important to them? With our retailers, if they're opening a new store in a new location, maybe it's partnering to create some great experiences for consumers as they're outside, whether it's a tailgate, or can we have Troy show up and film some fun spots that allow them to use that for their content platforms, and really just understanding, where do our goals dovetail, and then where can we leverage what we have to help support theirs, and vice versa, of course.
Yeah, well, Troy Aikman is a Texas legend. He's a legend in football, period. What is it like working with him and launching a new product with him in Texas?
Yeah, you're right. Troy is a Texas legend, a Texas royalty, if you will. But beyond that, he's such an incredible athlete, a businessman. He's a great friend, and he brings that same intensity and competitive drive he had as a player to 8. It led him to 3 Super Bowl wins. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback, and beyond that, he's had a legendary career in broadcast as well. And I think for anyone, it's if you saw how hard he worked day to day on being the best broadcaster he can be, building 8 with all of us. I mean, it's so inspiring, and he doesn't have to be doing it. I think it's been really rewarding to also just understand how much of a student of the game he is. He'll always say that I might not be the best broadcaster. I may not know everything, but I'll outwork everyone else. He'll ask questions, find people who know more and really understand what drove them to success. And he's brought that to 8. He's incredibly involved. He connects with us every single week to figure out, where are we winning? Where are our challenges? What opportunities does he have to engage, with our retailers, distributors? Sometimes, he'll send a text out to a bar owner and they're saying like, Richie, did Troy Aikman really just text me? Like, is that his number for sure? And I was like, yeah, that's Troy. And that's how involved he is. I mean, he even interviews every single person that we hire. So you see what, he values with teamwork and hard work and just showing up and doing what you say you're going to do. He brings that every single day to 8. So I've learned a lot from him, and we could not be more grateful to have him as a partner.
Yeah, and let's talk about you, Ruchi. You're shattering a glass ceiling, working as a woman of color in a largely heterogeneous male industry.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to you to shatter the glass ceiling, and what have you had to do to prove that you belong?
Yeah, this is such an interesting question. I never really thought of myself as shattering a glass ceiling. I've just shown up every day and I've worked really, really hard. I think, there's countless moments throughout my career that I've had to prove myself, whether it's this role or other ones. And, I think as a woman of color, I might have had to do so more often than others, but I haven't known anything different, right? So it's hard for me to say, is that just the simple reality of I've changed careers so many times. But I'll share an example, of early on in my career. So I was a derivatives trader, right, as I mentioned, and I came out of college thinking I was going to be an equity analyst, right? So it's a research-based role. I'm going to sit there and look up companies, going to see what's going on with them. And it was the midst of this crisis, and our fund had these derivative positions. Like, we need someone to come in and manage that. And so they hired someone to do just that. And they told him, don't worry, you're going to have this Wharton grad completely dedicated to your part of the business. And I was like, that was me. I had no idea that this was going to be my new role. And so a week before he started, he comes in that morning. I think my then boss was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be your new boss. You're going to work for him. We spent an hour. He must have gone through, 10 or 12 different things that I was going to be responsible for. I had never heard of a credit default swap at this time. It just was like all went over my head. And I sat there and I was like, okay. And as you know, I went to law school, so I was studying for the I was taking the LSATs at the time, and I thought, okay, what am I going to do? Well, at the time, not to date myself too much, but there was a Barnes and Nobles across the street from my office. So after work, I bought this 1,000-page book on fixed income securities. And I spent the entire weekend just reading everything I thought I would need to know, creating templates for the reports I was responsible for. And like I said, I mean, I still made a ton of mistakes, but that was just one of many times where you come in and it's like, I think the gauntlet was thrown. It's like, can you do this? And I said, okay, well, maybe, but I'm going to try my best. And I think we all go through that in one shape or another, regardless of our backgrounds. When I really sit back and I think about the glass ceiling, I think there's probably three big things I really see in that. There's first, just highlighting this discrepancy in opportunities for minority men and women. And I mean minority broadly, but based on whatever category that is, but it's real and we can't dismiss that. We have to acknowledge that this is something that exists, and there's a conversation to be had there. I think there's also a role for young women who are starting, or young men, and educating them in skills or mentorship, just making sure they have the tools they need to succeed. But I think the most important to me in all of it is just having conversations, fostering productive discussions about what are you working on. Emily, you and I started this call about some of the partnerships that I'm working on right now, and in your career and your network that you've had. And when I really think about these rooms where we have women or minorities, and we can talk about our businesses, how do we grow them, how do we partner with each other to really drive that success, I think those kind of conversations are happening all the time in bigger forums, in rooms that we're in, but maybe because we're women, because we're minorities, we're marginalized, our voices, they're often diminished. And so when we have an opportunity to really have our own forums and we can leverage each other's success and experience, I think the opportunity is just unmatched. And if we only focus on the first two parts, that, hey, it's, the playing field's uneven, there's a lack of training, or my coaches weren't great, all valid, but the game's going to be over before we even get our jerseys on. So that's why I really think it's exciting to be in these rooms with women and build that, really build that partnership and path to success.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you how you got the job. And as you were talking about Troy, I was thinking, okay, well, you have a lot of the same characteristics that he does. And you just gave these examples about your work ethic. Do you think that's what led you to winning the position to lead at 8?
Yeah, so I can back up. I can give you our origin story of sorts. And the way we actually met Troy, so Doug, Jake, and myself, we'd met over the last couple of years, and we were looking at this opportunity in beer, and looking at other celebrity founded spirit brands and things like that. And we're just like, there's room for an authentic brand in this category. And I was talking to a friend of mine about what we were trying to build and where we saw the opportunity. And they said, you need to talk to Troy. So we had a mutual friend who put us in touch, and it was really immediate, where we thought not only the kind of brand we wanted to build, what we wanted to be associated with, but just how we approached everything. It was so in line with each other. And it's actually funny, a few months, everything was kind of like, we started the brand, we'd raised some money, we're filming our first kind of brand spots, and we're in Oregon, and Troy looks at us and says, I almost didn't do this. And I was like, what? And he's like, I thought about it. And I was like, everyone asked me to do things, but then I thought, what, if this is the team I'm going to be working with, they seem pretty smart, I trust them, they're going to work hard. And so I believe in what this team can accomplish. So that was really what it was. It was exactly what you said, like hard work, believing in ourselves. And I think finding people that you can trust and really believe in to do their part and build a success together.
And you found a lot of success at 8. You have led 8 to achieve distribution in 50% of all Texas grocery stores. 6 packs of 8 are outselling those of Corona Premium across Texas. And in the last 7 months, you've shipped over 100,000 cases. How do you set goals for an emerging brand like 8? And what do you do when you reach them?
Yeah. I have to say, you have to suspend disbelief for a little bit. I think, our goal is to capture 1% share of our market to start. And, for reference, Mick Ultra basically owns almost 90%. And then Corona Premier is sort of the second biggest, along with, I think, somewhere between 8 and 10%. And so, um, to be able to even think you can do that, you got to kind of like, oh, okay, there's a lot of reasons why you can't. But I think when we're setting those goals, I go back to our sales team. We have a strategy. We call it TACT. It's TAACT. And it stands for tenacity, ambition, accountability, creativity, and trust. And I'll just focus on the first two because I think that's really what defines how we set our goals and how we reach them. We start with this idea of ambition, going for the moonshot, right? You have to believe that the ultimate goal is a stretch. And we always tell, our sales teams, even when we have goals, like we're not always going to reach them. In fact, if you reach them, we probably didn't set them high enough. So that's where we really, really first start. And then it's just creating a plan. How can we achieve it? What needs to happen? We'll do pre-mortems as a team. What roadblocks do we need to prepare for? What could go wrong? And then just breaking it down into, what do we have to do each quarter, each month, each week to get there, and understand that there's going to be setbacks, but with persistence and hard work, hopefully your steps forward are going to outnumber the steps backward. And as you said, last year we shipped actually over 130,000 cases in less than 9 months in market. So we not only met our goals, we far surpassed them. And so now looking at 2023, it's kind of the same conversation. How do we define success and how do we get there?
I love that. It's you broke down a lot of ways to set and achieve goals, and then also the mindset that you described around being an emerging brand and what it takes to believe in yourself. And I love what you said there, suspend disbelief. That's a really good way to summarize that mindset. So how have qualities like what we discussed, or qualities like willpower and confidence, impacted your career?
Yeah, I'd say they've defined it. I don't think I'd be where I am without just really dogged belief in myself and the discipline to put the work in. I did switch from a legal career into business, and that was tough. And I had to really dig down and understand what I could contribute. I took roles as an intern again, just to try to build up my resume and let people know that I can do this, even though I thought I could, of course. But what I really think is, I don't see willpower and confidence as innate qualities that I've had. I think they're ones that I've seen modeled and I've acquired with practice, right? Imposter syndrome is real. I told you at the beginning here, and I listened to your previous interviews, and I asked my team, I was like, are you guys sure I should be on this podcast? You always think about what you haven't achieved yet, but really believing in yourself, and every single day reminding yourself that where you've been and what you've come from. And there's always these quotes about people, they're so caught up in what they're trying to achieve next, you forget what you've already done or where you are now. And I think that's really important to kind of continually reinforce your own self-confidence. I think determination and willpower are very much the same. I started this year with a really tough set of meetings, and so I set a mantra for myself. I said, believe that the hard work will result in success. And my husband also has a startup. And so we've been saying that to ourselves almost every morning. And it's hard. We have to sacrifice so much time with our friends or family, with each other. We work really long hours throughout the week. I'm traveling 3 weeks out of the month. And just to keep going, sometimes it can be really, really tough. When the goal that you're trying to achieve, it's months or even years in the future, and there's all these setbacks. So it's just practice. And every morning I just wake up and I'm like, the hard work's going to get you there. That's what we've done.
Yeah, well, I think that a great exercise in goal setting is reflection on how far you've come, and that journey can inspire the confidence you need to set those big goals coming next. And I'm really excited for you to listen back to your interview today and just recognize how far you've come in your career, how much you're currently doing, and how far you have left to go. That will be so inspiring to others. And so in that reflection, how do you handle a setback? Is there an example of a failure you've experienced, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually one of my employees. We were doing our performance reviews, and we always have a 360 component to that. And he said something that really put it into perspective for me. And I think for me, the easiest way to handle failure is just to move forward. I kind of like start assessing what's wrong. I start forming solutions, and that does take reflection to really evaluate, okay, what did I want to have happen? What went wrong? Or what did happen when I didn't match what I wanted? But dwelling in it's always been really tough for me. I think that's kind of a quagmire you can get stuck in. But an example of a failure actually, so one of my 8 co-founders, Jake and I, we had started a company in 2016. It was a wearable, like a smart locket. So basically, instead of a couple pictures that you'd printed, it was attached to a phone and an app. So friends and family could send someone a photo and it directly showed up on your locket. And we were super excited about it. And we spent 2 years, developing this product. I found myself in South Korea after Jake's wedding, really the day after, to lead an engineering summit. We were talking to leadership at Google, at Pandora, Fossil, Apple, and we did all this work. We spent 2 years on it, raised money from our friends and family. And ultimately, for a variety of different reasons, we had to abandon the project. And it was such a lesson in humility, the unpredictable nature of business. You could be flying high and think, oh, we're going to get this contract. It's going to work. We're going to move forward, and then kind of have the rug pulled out from underneath you. And so I think the biggest lesson I learned, and I'm still learning it today, is that failure doesn't define you. I thought of myself as, well, I'm a failed entrepreneur now. How am I going to do this again? And here I am, 7 years later with a new business that I believe in, and really just being able to put one foot in front of each other or in front of the other, and understand that the failure it has lessons in it. And I think Jake and I are both better entrepreneurs now for it.
Yeah, I mean, they say hindsight is 2020. Do you think that was the tipping point in your career?
Oh gosh, that was one of them. We started that. I had actually been at my law firm for a little over 2 years, and I left without a job or anything else. That was tough, super scary, but it kind of just believed in myself. And I said, okay, so that was, I'd say, the first major shift away from kind of set paths that I had been on. But I think, the biggest tipping point is actually rooted in failure for myself, in that it was when we were first talking about AIDS. So Jake and I had been talking about this idea for a little while and kind of doing our research, learning the industry, but I still had a full-time job. We hadn't raised any money at that point. And so working on it kind of in the nights, weekends. And the firm I was working for at the time was a fintech startup. And I walked into a meeting. I had fought to be a part of this meeting. I thought, from day one, it was where I was going to contribute. And I had built out this whole program, I thought, to really improve a lot of the cross-functional things we were working on. So I spent all night prepping for it. I was going to present it. And I ended up getting laid off. I was totally blindsided. It was during COVID. I had to turn my video off. I was crying in the call, which I'd never done before. And that was like a sucker punch if I've ever had one. I felt like a total failure. I'd never been laid off before. And my husband was traveling for work at the time. So I called Jake and had a good cry. And he said, okay, well, this is great. Now you can just focus on 8. Let's make it happen. And that's really what we did. And I said, okay, I'm going to put everything I have into this business. And I mean, the growth we've had since then has been exponential.
That is such a great story of a time where you're at your lowest low, and your ability to transition into what's next and do it so quickly and really rebound, and you didn't shatter in a million pieces. You had like that bounciness to rebound. Where do you think that comes from?
Oh gosh. My brother actually referenced that in his speech at my wedding. So I don't know. I think My parent, I would go back to my parents. They came here with nothing. My dad had a couple dollars to his name and learned and built everything from the ground up. And the life that they've been able to provide, my brother, myself, even now, and the support they've given, it just helped show the value of hard work. And that, we were very lucky. I think we came at a time where you think about this American dream for so many immigrant families, and they truly did it. And I think seeing that example and having those shoes to fill has always been a driver for me. And I also just think that it's, for me, if I start thinking about what went wrong or what was done to me or what I think happened to me, it's just a spiral. And I found it's always easiest to just say, well, what can I do? What's in my control? What can I change about my reaction to make and build the reality for myself? And moving forward has been a way to process the bigger emotions and kind of channel any negative energy into positive next steps.
I think that's fantastic advice in resiliency and how you can, take that internal. Ultimately, it's up to you. So what is the future for women in brewing, and how do you hope your role and your success impacts the industry?
Yeah, it's, it's great. There's an increasing number of women in brewing across all parts of the business, whether it's, at the breweries, in building brands, distributorships. You're really seeing a lot of women come into their own in these companies and organizations. And I know many of them are actively supporting the growth of women and amplifying their voices. There's, an alliance for women across the industry as well. And I really just hope that my career kind of demonstrates the power of just hard work and belief in yourself. I mean, I had no experience in beverage alcohol before this, and hopefully everyone or anyone listening can see something of themselves or a challenge they've had in my own story, because it's been ups and downs. It hasn't been linear growth by any means. And, I really think anybody can reach new heights. It's just the challenges we all face are unique to ourselves, and really figuring out what we can have, like what we have in our own repertoire and what we need to do. And honestly, ultimately, I really hope that one day having a minority female CEO is just nothing unusual. It's nothing to remark upon.
Yeah, 100%. We're going to get there by sharing these conversations and having dialogue to make it normal.
Yeah.
It's part of the conversation. These voices aren't marginalized, they're amplified. So what is your life like in Austin? I know you travel a lot, but why do you love it there? Why do you love Texas? And why was that city the best place to root your career?
Yeah, I mean, Austin, it's such a vibrant community. There's an eclectic blend of locals, of transplants, there's creatives, startups, and other innovative businesses. It's a really great place, I think, a melting pot of so many different parts, not only of Texas, but the US in general. And Texas itself is, I mean, it's a great community. They're proud, they work hard. The ethos of eight, I think, is embodied in so much of Texas and its history as well. And we found these really active, just hardworking individuals. So it was a great place for eight to be home, to call its home. And that's why we built it there. And just finding like-minded individuals, I think, has been a huge blessing for us as a company to, find partners or find the energy and know that, hey, our community's out there. We just got to start talking to them. So yeah, Austin's been really, really great. And I think it's continuing to grow. So great place to root myself and hopefully launch from there.
I love it. All right. Well, now is the time for the final four questions.
Okay, got it.
So first one is a little deep, but after that, smooth sailing to the end of the interview. What is your biggest piece of advice for women today to help them to level up tomorrow?
Yeah. All right. So I have three pieces to this, actually. I think the first one is believe in yourself. There's enough naysayers in the world. There's no need to add your voice to them. Know your own worth. I think a lot of opportunities will come your way that are maybe not exactly in line with your goals or your vision. So just be really careful. Every time you say yes to something, you say no to something else. So be choiceful about when you compromise, if you have to compromise at all. And then I think the biggest one is just understand that no one else knows what they're doing either. I've been in so many forums and conferences, and I think the underlying assumption is that we don't know what we need to do to thrive in this world, but of course you do. And yeah, it's important to project confidence and build a network, but it's not a prerequisite to having a voice. And I think, in my experience at least, usually the loudest voices in the room, they're not always the right ones, or they're not always the ones that know everything. So just put the work in, do your research, and advocate for your ideas.
So where are you traveling to next?
Yeah, so well, I'm currently in Little Rock in Arkansas. I get back home, and then in March, my husband and I we actually take an annual ski trip with some friends, and it's become one of my favorite traditions. So we'll be in Banff for a week. But before that, I think I'm back in Dallas, and I think in Albuquerque as well.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
What is your walk-up song or your pump-up song?
Okay, so you gave me this question, and it was so hard to choose because I actually have an entire playlist. Like, I have a whole walking playlist dedicated just to this. But I'll give you my most recent addition, which was Miley Cyrus's new song "Flowers." So I love her and I love her voice, but I think at its core, there's a message of just empowerment and self-reliance. And I love that I have, a great support network and my family and my spouse, my co-founders, but there's nothing like boosting your confidence, like going into a meeting knowing that I have everything I need and I can rely on myself to get things done.
And finally, what's your favorite quote?
Yeah. So my favorite quote is from Maya Angelou. It's really not a new one for most people, but it says, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." I actually had this quote on my Facebook profile when I very first time I created it at 18. And it still hits home every single time I see it. It's still so impactful to me. And I think, especially as a leader, I consider it all the time. It doesn't mean you're shying away from clear, direct feedback or tough conversations, but making sure people know that they're supported, even when they make mistakes, and that, we're here to build together. I think that's really what it's all about. And I love that, right? That how you make people feel is what's most important, and the rest of it's just kind of window dressing.
Well, Ruchi, this has been such a really wonderful conversation. You've laid so much inspiring language into this dialogue that I know our listeners are going to take so much from. And we can't wait to celebrate you. So we'll hopefully have a cheers with an 8 beer in our own market and think about the woman at the helm. So thanks for being a part of the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Emily.